This episode contains material that might be triggering for some. If you need to stop the podcast at any time to take care of yourself, please do so.
If you need support, you can call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 988. Dialectical behavior therapy was created in the 1980s by Marsha Linehan in Seattle, Washington.
Today, DBT is taught all over the world.
We're two therapists who believe everyone can benefit from DBT skills.
I'm Kate.
I'm Michelle.
And this is DBT and Me.
Hello, everybody. This is normally when you would hear Kate chiming in. But today, you're not going to hear Kate chiming in, at least not for a while. You're just going to get me recording for you at first, and then later on in the episode, then Kate is going to be sharing. This episode, of course, we wanted to record together like we normally would, and then we had some things come up that led to us not being able to record on our usual time frame, and so we were facing the decision of what to do. We could either delay getting the episode out to all of you, or we could record in such a way that would allow us to be more flexible and have the episode still get to you on time. And that's what we decided to do. So Kate is going to record her part for the second half, and I'm recording my part now. You also might be able to hear it a little bit in my voice. I was sick recently. The kids and I had fevers all last week. It was pretty terrible. I'm feeling a lot better now, but as is true with a lot of colds and just illnesses that go around these days, the symptoms can linger for quite some time. So I can hear it for myself that my voice sounds a little raspy. And I know you all might be hearing that too, but trust me, I'm truly doing better and I am okay. But I'm going to start with introducing the episode and what we're going to be talking about. Then I'm going to do my sharing. And then, as I mentioned, if you keep listening, you'll reach a point in the episode where I turn it over to Kate to do hers. So Kate actually came up with this topic idea, and I really liked it, which is that I think as people who live and breathe and teach DBT, we talk about it a lot, that there are some skills that we see people love, and there are some skills that people don't like. And we really normalize this. We talk about this frequently on the podcast, that you may have some skills that are just not your jam, skills that are not your favorite, and then hopefully there's a few that you really fall in love with and you enjoy using, we could say. But the thing that Kate and I haven't really quite talked about, it comes up here and there. You're probably pretty aware of some of our favorite DBT skills. For example, if you've been listening to the podcast at all, you know that Kate loves self-soothing. That's no secret. But we also have our own DBT skills that we really struggle with. Sometimes we struggle with these skills because we just flat out don't like them. But these are just skills that really challenge us. These are skills that push us outside of our own comfort zone. These are the skills that we don't use very often in our lives for one reason or another. And Kate had this idea that we should record an episode, basically, peeling back the curtain a little bit to reveal what are some skills that we find really challenging. And we both agreed that we would set the intention to really do these skills in recent weeks so that we could put our money where our mouths are and actually practice some of the skills that challenge us the most. So we're each going to be doing some personal sharing today. A lot of this episode is really personal sharing, but hopefully it will be inspirational to all of you listening that you can reflect on for yourself. What are some skills that you find outside your comfort zone that you could use more intentionally in your life? And that's why we also realize this is one that, even though it's great to record together, of course it is, we can each really do our personal sharing separately. But before we dive into that, as we've been doing the last few months, there is a promotional thing that we want to spotlight. Last month, we were asking for those of you who have not yet got our book, and we were naming that there's multiple ways you could get the book: hard copy, audiobook, digital, like a Kindle kind of a thing. Whatever it is, we were urging people to go and purchase the book if you haven't already. This month, we know there are many, many, many of you that have already read/listened to the book. And if you already have, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It means so much to us that we made this thing and we put it out into the world, and that people have found it worth spending their money on and then spending their time on to actually engage with it and read it. And the thing that we'd really love to ask from those of you who have already read the book is, if you haven't given us a review on Amazon, this month we're asking you to please go on and do that. The same way that we talked a number of months ago, which it's common knowledge these days. I know I'm not sharing anything new, but it's just the rationale that we have for why this is something that matters, is that so much of it, when it comes down to reviews, is that it helps the algorithm prioritize what to make visible to other consumers, right? Like with a podcast, the more reviews a podcast has, that tells the algorithm this podcast is good. Put it in front of more eyes. Same thing with reviews on products on Amazon. The more reviews a product gets, the more it looks good, the more it helps people feel confident buying it. And it just boosts us up in the search so that people can come across our book more likely. So if you haven't given us a review, please consider doing so. I'll admit it, I'm one of those people that I rarely give reviews on products. It's just one of those things that escapes me sometimes. Sometimes I'll want to, but then in the moment I'm just like, I don't have time for that. And I know that everything and everywhere asks for a review these days, right? I go to the post office and they send me home with a receipt that has a survey at the bottom to tell them how they did. I get it. We are overwhelmed with this stuff. So I get it if you're in my shoes a lot where you don't go on and give reviews. And if you happen to have even a few minutes right now to pause listening and go give us a quick review because you read the book, say a month or 6 months ago, whenever it might be, and you were like, yeah, I really liked Kate and Michelle's book, and you have a couple minutes to tell the world, it would mean so much. And we do read, of course, every single one of those. We check Amazon periodically just to see if we've gotten any new ones, because again, this is our way to engage with all of you when so much of what we do with podcasting is lonely. It especially feels lonely right now as I'm recording by myself and I can't see Kate's face in front of me. So this is our way to form connections with you guys, get your feedback, know that what we're doing is valuable. So that's our promotion spotlight for this month. And now, as we get into more of the structure of how today's going to look with what we're talking about, Kate and I each chose 3 skills that are challenging. And we're going to be sharing for each of those skills why we struggle with it, what makes it a challenge for us, how we used it recently. As I already named a little bit ago, we set the intention of really focusing in on these skills in recent weeks of our lives. So how we've used it, giving some examples there, what we did find hard about it when we used it, and then we'll also talk about if there were any benefits, after we used it, what good came of it? What did we take out of it that might have been something we didn't expect? So I'm going to be diving into mine first. The first skill that I chose, this is one I know I've talked about on the podcast as being definitely not my favorite DBT skill. Definitely one that I struggle with. I went for the jugular, you guys, and I chose behavior chain analysis. Yep, I did. I chose a BCA. This has been a DBT skill that I have a long-standing relationship with, and that relationship has never been a warm and fuzzy one. Some of this may be review for those of you who have been loyal listeners to the podcast, but for those of you who might be newer and don't know, when I once worked at a girls' group home for a little over a year, I was doing behavior chain analyses with those girls. Oh, I was sometimes doing 1 or 2 a day. It was part of the protocol for the residential program that I was working at, where if a girl had any kind of, again, in DBT terms, problem behavior, right? If she self-harmed, if she ran away, if she physically assaulted somebody, whatever it was, if she had any kind of problem behavior, normally then she would be confined to her room for roughly 24 hours, only coming out to shower, go to the bathroom, or eat food separate from the other residents. And then at the end of those 24 hours, she would have to do a behavior chain analysis. And I, as a staff, would have to help her complete a behavior chain analysis. It was kind of like their get out of jail card. It was the final step they would have to do before they could basically return to their normal activities. And that was where I was introduced to this skill. So it's not a great history because I really have viewed behavior chain analyses for so long as being kind of performative, right? It's this long, extensive worksheet that you do to really dig into what preceded a problem behavior. I understand the ultimate intention behind it, which is to get a better understanding of why you're making the choices that you're making. And that if you can see really clearly, more or less, what was going wrong leading up to that point, then it puts you in the driver's seat the next time to make different choices that ultimately, hopefully, will not lead to a problem behavior and will lead to you making a more effective decision. It all makes sense to me why this skill exists. I just never saw it really used that way. I would go through filling it out with the girls. And then, sometimes like 3 days later, they would do the exact same problem behavior again. So to me, I was just like, I don't feel like this is really helpful. But if I zoom out and step back a little bit, I can see that maybe just given the population that I was working with, and given the way that this skill was used in that program, it wasn't used in such a way, even if we were going through the steps of the worksheet and doing that correctly, it wasn't really the girls coming into doing it, in most cases anyways, actually wanting to change. They were just doing it because they had to. But I can see how if somebody goes into a behavior chain analysis and they are truly wanting to change, this can be a great practice to do. Yes, it's long, but it can be worth it. And Kate and I did not look up the episode, and I'm not about to do it now while I'm recording for you. Normally I might do it. I'd be like, hey, Kate, talk for a little bit while I look this thing up. But since it's just me recording at the moment, I won't look it up. I just know Kate and I did an episode a little while ago because I think it was for anxiety. We had a listener ask that we do a behavior chain analysis for anxiety. And so we did. I worked through one, and it was not very pleasant for me to do. But coming into this month's topic of choosing the skills that we struggle with and wanting to really go outside our comfort zone with skill use, this was one of the ones that came first to mind for me. I've already gone into a little bit why I don't like it. I do not like this skill because it's so time consuming. It just is one that you really have to be dedicated to to get the most out of it. It takes a lot of mental labor to do a behavior chain analysis. But guess what, you guys? Just for y'all, I did it. I decided to give it a go. What was a bit challenging for me when I did it this time is that, Kate and I, we highlight this difference between us on the podcast pretty consistently. I don't have a history of engaging in what DBT would classify as problem behaviors. When I was looking back at the behavior chain analysis worksheet in the manual, it actually has an example that's a really good one, and it's about somebody relapsing with alcohol. That's a perfect behavior to do a behavior chain analysis for. But historically for myself, a lot of my quote unquote problem behaviors are not the type of problem behaviors that DBT is talking about. So sometimes it makes it tough for me to apply DBT skills to some of the things that I'm legitimately struggling with, but they're not always so the classical ones that we would think of. And that was the case here, but I wanted to pick something that really felt real to me, which is I chose the fact that oftentimes I go to fawning. If you don't know what that term is, it's come out in recent years. It's becoming more popular, but we've come to see that when people are triggered, when your nervous system is activated, we either go into fight or flight. Those are the two we know really well. You can also freeze. And then we have learned that there is a fourth option, which is that some people fawn. Fawning basically means you go into people pleasing. You may be acting super calm, super agreeable, telling people everything that they want to hear, but it's like a survival tactic. You're doing that in that moment. It often will come out in interpersonal conflict type of situations. You're doing that so that you don't upset the other person worse because you are scared of the consequences of what will happen if they get more and more upset with you. I definitely have a tendency to go towards fawning. And it's something I've been working on for a very long time in my own personal therapy. But I could recognize some examples of it recently in my life where that's been my response in conflict. So that's what I wanted to do my behavior chain analysis for. And today, even though I did it, I don't have it with me. So I can't look back to actually tell you guys how I filled out the steps. But I realized too, that's not actually the point of this episode. The point of this episode is not to give a masterclass on a behavior chain analysis. Again, we already have an episode on that from a long time ago when we first introduced the skill, and that more recent episode I was referencing where we did them for anxiety. So there's plenty of other things you can go and listen to episode-wise to learn more about BCAs. But I mostly want to talk about what my experience was of it. So what was hard is that I was noticing a lot of impatience arising within me as I was sitting going through the steps, especially when you get to the part that wants you to actually start naming the chains. That's the part that is most excruciating for me. And DBT, the worksheet gives you so many. It gives you, I want to say more than 20, again, without having the worksheet in front of me right now. But I think it gives you 20 spaces to fill in. You're supposed to be looking at your actions and your emotions and your thoughts and your body sensations and really breaking it down moment by moment to what you were experiencing. That part just wears me out. It just does. I always feel like I'm missing something when I do BCAs. It's the toughest part. So I definitely felt impatient there. There was even a part of me that didn't want to write it down. I was like, I'll just think this through in my head. I don't have to actually write it down. And I was like, no, take the time, actually do it. Those were some of the things that I noticed coming up in me. Here's the thing though, in terms of how I benefited and what I got out of going beyond my comfort zone and actually doing this skill, there were a couple questions that I had forgotten about with the BCA process that I found really helpful. As I just named, most of the time when I think about a behavior chain analysis, I think about the chain, the actual meat of it. But there were some other questions on there that I had forgotten about that were insightful to me. So one question was, and again, I wish I had it in front of me, but I don't. So I'm going off the top of my head. I don't even have my laptop on right now because my battery is about to die. So this is truly off the top of my head, you guys. But there was a question about vulnerability. I'm looking at my notes on my phone, though. I think what it was asking was vulnerability and where I was at before this happened. Like, just thinking about that. Because vulnerability to a problem behavior can start sometimes weeks before the actual problem behavior itself. Definitely probably within a couple hours before the problem behavior. And the BCA worksheet doesn't break that part down into a lot of depth, but I found it really helpful to think about what has been going on that was starting to make me vulnerable, even before this exact situation. That's fascinating because it really points to, like, where was I maybe struggling with please skills, and how could that have been helpful for me to be better engaging with that type of stuff? And then maybe in the moment, I would have made a different decision. So I liked that. That question felt good to explore and think about further on the worksheet. It also had a question at the end, after, again, you work through all the steps in the chain, where it asks about consequences. And it breaks it down into two different categories. The first one says something like thinking about consequences in the environment or for other people. But then it has a question I was like, ooh, that's a good one. And once again, I'd forgotten that it asks this because I don't look at this skill very often. But then it asks, what were the consequences within yourself? I interpret that to mean, like, where did you self-abandon? Or where did you let yourself down? Even if nothing super bad happened externally in your world, how did it impact you on the inside? That's what it's getting at. And that was so great for me to reflect on because it helped me realize, oh yeah, I feel some shame when I do this. This isn't me speaking my truth. This is me, again, just focusing on the other person's experience. Like, those are some of the things I remember writing in that box. And that helped me tremendously. And that's what I want to hold on to from doing this process, was the answers to those questions. Less about the chain itself and more about understanding what preceded the fawning and then how did it stick with me after it happened. So, good job, behavior chain analysis, for asking those questions. I'll move on to my next skill that I chose. Oh, this one really feels like a dirty little secret as somebody well-versed in DBT. Kate and I say all the time that the foundation of DBT is mindfulness. We also really normalize that mindfulness is hard, and that's why it's a practice, because it's something that nobody can do perfectly, even monks. Mindfulness is an area where we can always grow in and improve. With that having been said, the thing that I don't talk about very often is the fact that I'm really bad at practicing mindfulness, you guys. I just don't practice it very often in my day-to-day life. And again, as somebody who believes in DBT, finds great benefit from DBT, talks about DBT all the time, I wish I was able to say with confidence, oh yeah, I have a robust mindfulness practice. I can name ways that I incorporate mindfulness into my life almost every day. But I can't sit here and tell you guys that because that would not be the truth. The truth is that I'm not very mindful. I'm not often as present as I'd like to be. We talk about how mindfulness is doing things. I'm trying to recall the John Kabat-Zinn quote, and I'm going to butcher it more than likely. But it's about doing things on purpose in the moment without judgment. That's, some key elements of mindfulness. I'm not good at it. And I don't even really make efforts to try to be good at it. And even if the goal is not even to be good at it, the goal is to at least be trying to do it at all. And I don't. So I had my second skill come to me pretty much right after I was like, all right, I should do behavior chain analysis. I thought to myself, Michelle, you've got to start practicing some mindfulness a little more too. There are a lot of different ways to do this. So you just need to start finding a way that works for you. Because a big reason why I don't practice mindfulness or really think about it very much at all is because the way I put it down in my notes is, I'm in doing mind all the time, ! If you could recall that one way to conceptualize wise mind is that wise mind is the intersection of doing mind and being mind. I am in my doing mind. I have a million things to do at all times, keeping up with my kids, keeping up with my business. I'm a very busy person. But let's be honest too. I've been that way most of my life, even long before I was a mom and long before I had my practice. It's always been something or other that keeps me really busy. And when I'm busy, that means I'm often thinking ahead. Or it means I'm not actually being mindful of what I'm doing in the present because I'm just trying to get it done so I can move on to the next thing on my to-do list. That's my biggest barrier to using this skill. That's why I struggle with it. That's why me being mindful is definitely outside my comfort zone, because it's just not the way I typically interact with the world at all. I interact with the world in a very busy, rushed sort of way. Much of the time, very future focused rather than present focused. So I was thinking about how I would want to do this for myself, and I was aware that it may help me to set an intention. So we talk about how, again, you can be mindful of anything, anytime, anywhere. And so when I was reflecting on what I would like to be mindful of, I realized something that I don't think I've actually thought about much before, but that the way that Kate and I traditionally talk about mindfulness, it just isn't a good fit for me. We talk about being mindful of daily activities, things that are external to you. For example, we'll talk about being mindful while you're taking a shower. Notice how the soap smells and, maybe close your eyes and just feel how it is on your skin or that kind of thing. And you can have, the describing part of mindfulness be like, oh, now I'm washing my arm. I see the bubbles running down my fingers, for example. If that way of practicing mindfulness works for you, that's fantastic. It can be a really great way to focus your mind on something outside of yourself, and that could be very calming for worries and other things you may have going on. But that's not a way of practicing mindfulness that I actually like very much. And so again, that feels kind of strange to say because it's the way we talk about it all the time. We talk about all the benefits of that and how this is how you can do it. Is to just observe and describe what you notice around you. Great. But deep down, I much prefer to practice mindfulness of my internal world. I prefer being mindful of my thoughts, my emotions, my body sensations. I would much rather spend time inside, you could say, than focusing outside on observing an object that's nearby to me and describing it objectively. That way of mindfulness isn't so much my jam. So after I realized that piece, then I set the intention that what I wanted to be mindful of was catching moments of joy within myself. And I didn't want this to be anything major. I didn't want to set too high of a bar because it wasn't about actually, spending time, we could say meditating in a state of joy or trying to really, I don't know, just spend a whole lot of time there. I just wanted to be paying attention. I just wanted to notice because I am aware, if you ask me, for as busy as my life is, how I generally feel about my life, I'm going to tell you I feel good. I feel good about how I am with my kids. I feel good about things with my business. I feel good about a lot of things in my life. Most days, I go to bed and I feel generally happy. So if that's the case, this is my thought process that I was having for myself. If that's the case, that most days I'm feeling really good, then how do I be mindful of that in the moment when those good feelings are happening in real time? How can I start just soaking in a little bit more the things that are bringing me that joy? And so I started to just pay attention a little better. And I noticed it a lot at work when I would be having a moment, maybe in a session with a client that was feeling really like a good session. I'd just be sitting there and I would just kind of tell myself, oh, I feel it. I feel joy in this moment. That's often what I would say a little bit internally. I feel joy in this moment, or I feel peace. I feel excitement. I feel happy, whatever word came to me. I just had this little moment of kind of putting a pin in it, being like, oh, there it is. And that was about all it took. And then I'd keep going. But I was catching it. And there were a couple of times where I did incorporate a half smile where appropriate, because it just felt natural as a good way to cement it in my body. And speaking of my body, I really tried to notice that too, of as soon as I would catch it and be like, oh, there it is, I feel joy. To kind of pause and be like, what in my body is letting me know I feel joy? Because that's where our emotions live, remember? Neck down. That's where our emotions hang out in our body. So something in me is feeling that joy. How do I notice it physically? And the minute I would draw my attention to my body, I'm like, oh, I noticed my shoulders relaxing a little bit more. I'd breathe a little deeper. I was like, oh yeah, there's my body letting me know. Oh, I see it. Well, that's cool. Yeah, then it'd keep going. But I really had to set a practice. I really had to set my GPS coordinates, you could say, of what I was going to tune into. It would not have been specific enough for me to just be like, all right, I'm just going to be mindful at random points over the next 2 weeks about something or other. Nope. So what I would encourage for any of you who are sitting here going, uh-oh, right? I'm kind of like Michelle. I don't really do any mindfulness either. Like here I am, I'm trying to do DBT. Kate and Michelle say that mindfulness is the foundation of it, but I just overlook that piece and I don't do that part of DBT. But deep down it would be good for you. So if you're like me in that way, I would encourage you to pick something very specific to be mindful of. Either something internal, or again, if you have a daily activity where maybe you're like, I want to be really mindful when I'm playing with my kids, or I want to be really mindful when I am washing the dishes, or I want to be mindful when I go for my daily morning walk, or whatever it is. Either choose a part of your day where you are going to be mindful of that. I've given the advice before of one way this could look as an example is to make the decision when you're eating food, have that first bite be mindful. Just the first one. After that, okay, if you need to eat quickly and go, eat quickly and go. But that first bite of a meal, savor it. Chew it slowly. Notice the smell. Notice the taste. Close your eyes if it's not weird to do so wherever you are. Be with it. But you have to, I think, really set a clear practice in order for mindfulness to work for you. Otherwise, you're probably going to miss it. So that was really helpful for me because I was finding it in the chaos of my life because I knew what I was looking for. And in terms of, again, what maybe was challenging for me about it, there were some days in a row that went by where I just kind of forgot. I mean, it is hard to remember to do it. I think setting external reminders can be helpful, and I didn't do that in this case for myself. But yeah, I just felt so many benefits from doing this one. Truly, I just felt a lot more gratitude and a bit more slowed down. And I really think it was a nice way to just in that moment be aware of my body and just pause and go, oh, this moment feels good. I like this. And then keep going. So I'm on to my last skill now. My last skill I chose was fast. Ooh, because out of the 3 interpersonal effectiveness skills, fast is a tough one for me. If you need a brief reminder of what FAST stands for, it stands for being fair. The A is technically no apologies, sticking to your values, and being truthful. And we want to be using this skill when we're communicating and really wanting to prioritize our self-respect. So fast has been a difficult one for me for a very long time, mostly because of 2 elements of it. I really struggle with not apologizing, as many people do with this skill. That's why I say when talking about fast, if nothing else, start there. You can ignore the other 3 letters of it for a while if you need to. First, it's about getting it down with not apologizing. That's a good beginning point. That having been said, it's a point that's always challenged me. So that's one I've struggled with, is the not apologizing. The second one I've struggled with is the being truthful. I am so tempted to tell people what they want to hear. I'm so tempted to make up little white lies. I'm so tempted to just say the nice thing rather than the honest thing because I worry it's going to burn bridges sometimes with people. But those are the things that I really wanted to challenge myself on with this. So this was actually one that I went into a little bit backwards. The other 2, I was thinking to myself, okay, Kane, I have this episode coming up. I need to pick a few skills to stretch myself on. These are the ones I'm going to pick, and I'm going to do them, right? I'm going to do a BCA, and I'm going to intentionally practice mindfulness. However, with fast, I thought about it, and I was like, hold on a second. I did this one already. So I will just talk about how I happened to use it as an example on the podcast. So how I used it recently was actually with my husband. He and I have been going through, I'll be honest, a tough spot in our marriage. Things have not been easy with all the pressures around us. I mean, raising 2 young kids is no joke, you guys, and the impact that can have on a relationship. Let me just put it that way. So one of the things that he and I have been talking about more is the fact that we've known it for a very long time that we have mismatched love languages, as do many people. Specifically, my husband's love language is touch, and that is second to last for me. And so oftentimes for me, when it comes to touch, I'm not one to really dole out a lot of affection in our relationship unless I'm really feeling like we are connected in other ways. I need to feel like we're having good communication and we're really being a good team and we're having quality time and all that other stuff. And if all the other pieces fall into place, then to me, I become a more lovey-dovey, affectionate person. But for my husband, actually the reverse. He's the type of person that if there's no touch really going on in the relationship, if we're not holding hands, if we're not kissing very often, whatever it may look like, for him, it's really hard to feel connected in those other ways. It's really hard to feel like the quality time is actually good quality time. It's hard to feel like he can be as open in communicating with me. He really feels like touch is like the spark that lights the fire of everything else in our relationship. And I couldn't disagree more. To me, touch is like the icing on the cake. And I want the cake before I put icing on it. So we're different in that way. And we had a conversation at one point where I didn't even really realize I was using fast at the time. But I was, because all the elements were there, where he was talking about how he wants more touch in our relationship. And let's be honest, if I was doing the fawning stuff I was talking about earlier, and if, let's say, the conversation really felt like it was going sideways and we're getting more and more and more upset with each other, it would be so tempting for me to take the approach of, you know what? Yes, you're right. I will just do my best to make sure that I'm being more affectionate with you. And that's the point that I would have arrived at. But instead, as he was bringing up his concerns about the lack of touch in our relationship, I actually went more the route of fast. And it felt good because I approached it with wanting to be fair to both of us and really sticking to my values. I was very honest and I didn't apologize for anything. And I kind of explained to him how I just said it to all of you, which is that when he's asking me for more touch, I want to be really clear about why that touch is not happening for me, rather than just say, okay, yes, I'll give you more touch. To say, well, this is what's going on. This is why I haven't been giving as much touch to our relationship. This is how I view things in our relationship, not just our relationship, any relationship, right? The whole icing and cake idea that I just talked about. And to say, I don't just want to give touch for the sake of giving it because it's quote unquote like what I'm supposed to do as your wife. I really want to only be giving touch if it's coming from a place of feeling genuinely connected to you. I can see how you view this situation. I can see why it's so foundational to you because it is your love language and all of these things. I get why you want more of it. And I agree with you that our relationship could use more of it. That's true. And we need to not just be looking at how to bring more touch into our relationship. We need to also be looking at how to bring in some of these other things too. Just adding more touch is not going to solve some of these other problems. So I'll keep this in mind, what you're saying about touch. And let's also make sure that we're really digging in a little deeper to understand why there's been a lack of touch in our marriage and what we need to do to address that. So then touch can come back in a more organic way. That's how I talked about it. And it felt really good. So hopefully you heard the elements of fast in there just now as I replayed what I said to him for you guys. But what was challenging about it for me is that I knew his wants and needs were different than mine. And when I'm just aware of that with anybody, I know I have this tendency within myself to, I just want to focus on their experience. I switch into give a lot. Like I could have totally gone in the direction of give. Oh, believe me, I could have. And there were some elements of give if you were listening carefully, right? I did validate like, yeah, you're right. We do need more touch. But it's so easy for me to just go there, to be like, yes, you're right. I will do that. Rather than saying, hold on a second, that's not actually me being fair to me. And that's not actually me being truthful and sharing what I really think. So that what was hard is that I was fighting that tendency the whole time I was doing it, to really stand in my truth and be like, I'm not just going to agree to give you touch. I'm not just going to do that because I know it's deeper than that for why touch isn't happening. And that's the stuff that I want us to look at. Because when I do veer off in that direction of just focusing on the other person's experience, then yeah, I'm not being fair to myself anymore, sticking to my own values. That definitely happens sometimes. And that's why fast as a skill, generally speaking, is really hard for me. But what I found I benefited from when I did it this time is that now that I've had that conversation with my husband once, I really feel like it laid the foundation for us to come back to that again. So I think also this is a good principle to follow with fast. Once you do it the first time and you rip off that Band-Aid with someone, then you can reference back to it later and be like, hey, remember when we talked about this a month ago? Those things are still what I'm feeling, or that kind of an idea. And it helped me see too that nobody is the bad guy when it comes to talking about values. In a lot of the examples that Kate and I have role played on with fast over the years, when leading groups together, you could say there's kind of this quote unquote bad guy, this person who's like pushing the boundaries, right? There's the person who's like, I want you to loan me money. And you're practicing fast to say, no, I'm not going to loan you money. Or the boss who wants the employee to work overtime. And the employee is saying, no, I'm sticking to my values and I'm only working 40 hours a week. We've talked about it that way. But I actually realized after the way that it showed up for me in this example is that many times with fast, there doesn't actually have to be an explicit boundary that's being pushed. It can just be a situation where you realize, oh, this person and I, we're communicating and we just have different values. We just do, right? They have one perspective. I have mine. We're not seeing eye to eye. This actually might be a good time for fast. Again, normally I think we would think, oh, go to give. Yes, elements of give. But this may be a time to really look at, how can we be fair and truthful with each other and each stick to our own values here without apologizing for it? Can we do that and be respectful? Those could be good times to use fast. There doesn't have to be somebody that's like pushing you to say yes to their request. And then you use fast to tell them, no, I'm not doing what you want. Doesn't have to look that way. It can look very different. And that was helpful to realize. Okay, one thing I forgot to name at the beginning that Kate and I are also doing in this episode. So we each wanted to name our suggestions for what we want you all to take away for how you can start incorporating more skills that you struggle with into your own life. So as I mentioned, as you've already seen, this episode is a lot of personal sharing, but we wanted to give some practical suggestions too. So we each have two. So you'll hear Kate's later on, but mine are that I want you to think about when you're using a skill that's hard for you. It's really important to accept that there's going to be discomfort and that there's going to be setbacks with it. And to just remind yourself, this is the only way to grow. This is the only way to become more comfortable with this skill is to recognize that probably the first couple times you're going to use it, it's going to suck. I feel like I see this with my son, who's a pretty picky eater all the time. I have to just recognize, oh yeah, Noah's probably going to try a new food and not like it. Or like the first time I serve him a food, it's just going to sit on his plate. He's not going to even look at it. Probably even the 10th time I serve him that food, he ain't going to touch it. And then maybe there will be a day where he touches it with his finger. Like maybe time number 20. And then maybe time number 25, he'll actually take a bite. And even then he might not like it and he might spit it out. But then maybe time 30, he'll actually want to eat it. Now, hopefully it doesn't take you that many times with the skill. And I'll be honest, it normally doesn't take him that many times either to adjust to a new food. But it's probably going to feel like that a little bit with using skills that you don't like. It's going to be a while before you feel like, haha, like you can digest it, to bring it into the picky eating metaphor, is that you might not like it at first when you do it. And that's okay. Just see if there's any value you could take from doing it. And that because it's a skill you struggle with, because it's not your favorite, because it's a challenging one for you, yeah, you're going to experience setbacks. That's totally okay. Effort really does count here. And then the second thing that I thought would be helpful is that it might be good to have somebody that you could be checking in with. We've talked about this on other podcast episodes, the importance of having a trusted other and having somebody to hold you accountable. Kay and I knew that we were going to be recording this episode. I knew I was going to need to do these things because I needed to have something to share, and I didn't just want to bullshit my way through it. So having somebody where you can say, especially if it's somebody who knows a little bit about DBT, to say, hey, I'm picking a skill that is not my favorite and I'm really going to be trying it out. But can you please check in with me on how it's going? Please ask me. Please make sure that I'm actually using it, that can really help. And again, if it's somebody who knows DBT, encourage them too. And you could do it for each other because we all have at least one DBT skill that whenever we hear about that skill, we kind of internally groan and are like, oh, not that one. So you could do this for each other too, to be that accountability. Okay, that wraps up my part. I'm going to end my recording here. And now I'll turn it over to Kate.
All right, everyone. I guess it's my turn now. As you all heard Michelle say in her intro, shit's weird today. Poor Goose is on the bed next to me in a cone of shame. Very sad. And Michelle's got stuff happening in her life also, and such that we are recording separately. So if it sounds a little weird, either just audio quality or also just because you're used to us actually interacting and having banter, I apologize for the lack thereof. We'll also see how much more quickly my half goes since I don't have Michelle to play off of. Let's see how it goes, guys. All right, so the first skill that I wanted to talk about around skills that I struggle with is the skill of please. Now, I know the joke is that I struggle with this skill because I struggle with the acronym, because PL should not stand for treat physical illness, but really, I would say that I don't do great with most of the letters most of the time. There's a lot of different reasons that I struggle with this skill. On a biological level, I have bad interoception. Don't know if you guys know that word, but basically means like, how well can you tell what is happening in your body? Simple stuff that most people probably take for granted, like noticing that you're hungry, noticing that you need to use the bathroom, noticing that you're tired, noticing, things like that, the internal state of your body. I'm terrible about it. Quite often in life, I'll have to turn to companions in a car with me or something and say, hey, can you remind me I need to go to the bathroom when we get there? I'll be like, won't your body be telling you? I'm like, nope, I'm aware in this moment, but there's no guarantee I'll be aware again in an hour. So I can realize oh, crap. I've been hungry for the last 5 hours and I just haven't eaten anything, which I know is not necessarily normal for everybody. So that's one reason that I struggle with this skill. On a more psychological note, I have a difficult time putting my needs first, right? It can often feel like anytime I'm really leaning into trying to take care of my please skills, it's at the cost of some other person or relationship or something in my life. And this has been especially difficult since getting Goose. What good habits I had in the please realm, most of them vanished when Goose came into my life. That being said, I have been using it more lately, and I'm proud of myself. So let me talk about where or how I guess I've been using it. Considering the PL is my least favorite part of the acronym for the letter purposes, I feel probably the best about the fact that I have been pursuing the fuck out of getting my medical issues addressed. Guys, I cannot tell you how many doctor's appointments and specialists I have been seeing. Pulmonology and dermatology and radiology and orthopedics and rheumatology and gynecology and what is it? And what's ENT? Ear, nose, and throat, but it's enterology? Oh, gastroenterology. Anyway, so many different things. Blah, so many doctors. But still, considering how much I dislike doing that all, I'm very proud of myself for how well I've done with pursuing all of that in the last, 3 or 4 months, probably. 2 to 4 months. I'm bad at time since the pandemic. What else? And you know what? While Goose may have made most of the rest of my please skills worse, one thing he definitely has helped me improve is the moving my body part. like moving my body part. Which body part, Kate? My left pinky. Sorry. The part of please that is, they say exercise, right? But I like to reframe that as moving my body. And Goose has absolutely helped me with that a ton, right? Because he needs to move his body, and most of the ways he wants to move his body involve me moving my body too, right? Taking him on walks, taking him walks around the dog park, playing in the yard, playing around the house, yada, yada, yada. So he has definitely helped me with that and helped me be more consistent there. And while admittedly this is a place, excuse me for the yawn. That's funny. That yawn is perfect. Whoever's, we better keep that in the episode, because sleep hygiene is the thing that I was about to talk about. Improving a bit. It's still not great, but I'm really working on having something of a ritual or a routine, at least. Even if I'm not great about getting off of screens, I have it set so that my phone goes to black and white or grayscale at a certain time each night to make it both less exciting, so less tempting, and also less blue light triggering. I also have it go like warmer colors when the sun sets, kind of thing. What else? Anyway, basically, I'm just trying to improve my sleep hygiene, and I have noticed that it's been helping. So what has been particularly challenging about improving my please skills, or skills? Is it one skill or several skills, depending on how you want to think of it? How do I phrase that? Basically, I sometimes have a propensity to see some behaviors as self-care that are kind of anti-please behaviors. I put the self-care in my notes in quotes because it's not really self-care, but this is things like maybe not eating well, but treating myself to a lot of foods that are fun or rewarding, but not necessarily nutritious or good for me. Staying up too late to do things. Definitely not necessarily avoiding mood-altering substances, right? So there can be things like that my brain wants to feed to me as being self-care that aren't really. And so I need to watch out for that. Those can get in the way of my practicing my please skills well. As I mentioned earlier, I have a difficult time putting myself first, right? And that's what please often looks like or feels like for me. Whether or not it is perceived by the outside world as me putting myself first, it may not, but it feels that way internally, and I can struggle with that. Definitely struggle with being consistent, right? Hello, ADHD. That's the name of the fucking ADHD game, right? It's difficulties with being consistent. And I, more back in the medical realm, I guess, with treating physical illness, I can struggle with self-advocating and with adulting enough to do all the things that I've been doing, right? Trying to keep track of all my appointments, trying to make all my appointments, trying to reach out and, follow up on every referral that I'm given and things like that. So those are the things that have been, I don't know, both historically and proximally difficult or challenging about reaching for and utilizing my please skill more lately. And now, last but certainly not least, how did I benefit? Guys, I might joke about my meat suit and things like that all the time and how we're meat bag robots, but seriously, right? Like, if we think about any bottom-up skills working, why does self-soothe work? Why does tip work? Why does anything like that work? It's because our bodies and our brains are so integrated, right? So I can definitely see, as I take better care of my body, that it has ripple effects into my psychology, into my, just into my mood and way of moving through the world in general. And it definitely leaves me feeling more well-resourced to actually do the things that I enjoy doing, right? So when I'm doing more of my please skills, I have more energy and more spoons, for those of you who know what that means, to do things like paint or go to the movies or cook or things like that, that are also good for me in multiple different ways. So, definitely noticing that please is a way to help refill my resource cup, I guess. Yeah, that's that one. All right. Originally, Michelle and I were going to alternate. So in the notes, we have alternated our things. All right. My next one is the long-term A from ABC, right? So this is accumulating, they say positive emotions. I like to say positive experiences, but whatever. Accumulating positive emotions in the long term, right? So why do I struggle with this one? Well, part of this is going to sound a bit repetitious from the last one, but part of the reason I struggle with this is self-prioritization, right? If you're pursuing your own values, right, then you're putting your values first in that pursuit, right? And I can struggle to do that, especially in relational contexts, right? If doing something that would pursue that long-term A for me pulls me away from my friendships or away or out of my marriage for some reason, or means that I'm giving less attention to the dog, or things like that, that I can struggle a lot with feeling guilty around that. And for some of them, it's just a difficulty with adulting, right? Most of the time, to pursue our values and improving our lives in those sort of long-term, large-scale ways takes, action. It takes actually doing things. This is similar but slightly different from the difficulty with consistency that I was talking about before, but it's still, between lack of energy, which I know the play skill is helping with that, but with chronic health issues and stuff like that, the fatigue is real. So between fatigue and, issue with spoons sort of things and ADHD, I can just really struggle to adult in such a way that I can, that I do more of these things. Like, for instance, this is not a place I've succeeded at this, but at least not recently, but I at least conceptually might very much enjoy volunteering my time more in the universe for things. But that involves finding a place and committing to it and finding out what the commitment is and setting the blah, 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 blah. Much less likely to actually follow through with that long-term A portion of the skill than if it's something that I can do, at home, essentially. Which, I guess, segues really well into, into the place that I have actually, I think, successfully used the long-term A from ABC recently. And by recently, I should really mean in increasing amounts over the last couple of years. So I guess recently is a bit of a struggle, but this is, I'm talking about picking up watercoloring. I too can speak. I know I did this technically years ago, but I've definitely gotten, pursued it more. So I guess this could also be a little bit of the build mastery that I'm doing that. But I put it down for a while after my friend Rachel died last year. And then, especially since getting the pooch, I have felt like I had no time, right? Like I was telling myself this story that I had no time. There was no place I could do it, yada, yada, yada. But that wasn't true. And I've picked it back up again recently, doing far more consistent work with it. And I thought it was important, since I was talking about the long-term A and how that's grounded in values, to talk about what values I saw myself as fulfilling with picking up watercoloring and pursuing it the way I have. And the two that most immediately popped up to me were the values of creativity / curiosity, which I really see as going together, and of lifelong learning, right? To me, it's very important to be a lifelong learner. And I love picking up new skills or hobbies or things like that in that regard when I can, because I love the pursuit of knowledge and of skill. It makes me happy. So what was challenging about using the long-term A here for picking up and continuing with watercoloring? I can be prone to judging myself for not watercoloring enough or not getting better at watercoloring fast enough. That can be hard. I can struggle to, see, it's even sneaky in my notes. I was going to say I can struggle to find the time, but that's not exactly accurate. There's definitely time available to me most days. I struggle to take advantage of the opportunities of time that I have. That's definitely true. And I can sometimes struggle just in general to do any kind of activity or hobby, etc., if no one's doing it with me. And I don't have any friends who watercolor. This is definitely a solo pursuit of mine. And so sometimes that leaves me feeling a little adrift. So, while these are all things that are difficult for me about it, I think that are all reasons that I'm proud of myself for doing it anyway, because this is something I'm doing on my own for myself. I've had to do all the learning of how to do it and the acquisition of the materials, and yeah, I feel good about how I've interacted with it. Which I suppose is me accidentally slipping ahead again into the how I benefited. I mean, man, I didn't think about this while I was doing my notes, but it's a remarkably similar explanation to the please thing, which is to say that it fills my cup. Which I suppose is me sliding a little bit ahead into the how I benefited bit, which also I'm realizing now sounds an awful lot like how I benefited from the please skill, which is to say that doing this fills my cup, right? Just like it's sold as, excuse me. It helps to build a life worth living. It helps to make me more emotionally resilient, right? This is very much a skill that is, I don't know, working as advertised, for a lack of a better way of putting it. When I can live a life that's more in alignment with my values, I feel better and I withstand the day-to-day challenges better. I know I sound like a brochure, but guys, it's just real. That's just true. So, definitely other things, like I could talk a lot about how my work life does a lot of this for me. Is a place that I utilize this skill, but that's sort of the easy way out. And I was realizing that I can sort of look like I'm good at this skill if you only look at my work life, but I can really struggle to do it personally. So I wanted to use a personal example as opposed to a professional one. Okay, last but not least, my third skill that I struggle with is stop. The reasons I struggle with this skill are, one, my emotions can really sneak up on me. Like, I can find that I'm tooling along and someone will say or do something that's triggering for me, or something else will happen in that regard, and I go kind of from 0 to 160, really quite quickly. Sometimes even when I notice that I'm in a place where I could really use stop, I can feel like stepping away is selfish. Like, I can forget that it's good for the relationship and good for the conversation if I set those boundaries. Instead, it feels selfish or like I'm abandoning the person I'm in conversation with. And I think one of the bigger ones that I can struggle with, and definitely still am struggling with it, I guess I should say, is I struggle to remember that I can utilize stop even when I'm alone. Like, my brain tends to put it very much as an interpersonal skill, not like an interpersonal effectiveness skill, but a skill that's utilized and necessary due to interpersonally driven situations, right? So I need to remind myself that I can do it when I'm getting, I don't know, overwhelmed by the world, and not just when I'm having a difficult time with a conversation or an interaction or a relationship. Let's see. A couple of different ways I've used it recently. I realized I was getting emotional and struggling with a conversation that I was having with my husband, and I stopped, and my take a step back kind of activity was taking the dog for a short walk. And that gave me the time to observe, what was going on for me internally and externally, and hygiene. And also to, ow! God, Lord, cat. Sorry, guys. Stopped a conversation with my husband when I realized that my emotions were getting the best of me, in a way that wasn't really called for or effective. And I took the dog for a walk, and that gave me the space and the time to sort of reground myself, observe, what was going on, sort out my priorities, and be able to proceed better when I came back from the short walk with the dog. And also, I recently was in the midst of a difficult conversation with my mother when she was at a rehab facility. And I also utilized it then. I took a moment, told her I needed to put some stuff in the car and that I'd be right back. And I utilized that little short walk to be my take a step back, observe, right, and get ready to proceed in a way that felt best to my wise mind in the moment. So I'm really proud of myself for both of those. That being said, I would really like to be managing to remember this skill more when getting overwhelmed by the dog or the world in general. And I still didn't do very well with that recently. There's definitely been times where my emotion mind is winning out in struggles with the pooch, and I don't remember that I can utilize this the same way. So I still want to be working on improving that. And also, I think, I don't know, something else that was challenging about it was that it took me a little bit. I'm glad I took walks. I know sometimes the stop could be done very quickly, but I needed a few minutes because it did take me a little while to try and find my wise mind and figure out how best to proceed in both of those situations. So I'd love to get, if anything, able to get a little bit quicker into my wise mind when trying to practice stop. But considering how big my emotions can be sometimes in those situations, I'm trying to give myself grace for the fact that that's difficult. How I benefited. I think there were two situations that could have been a lot worse. Like, not necessarily, I don't know, like relationship damaging, but just more emotionally negatively impactful. And instead they weren't, right? Like, my taking the chance to utilize stop in both of those situations, I think really helped the rest of the day go by better. It helped me to prevent, I don't know, to opt out of patterns. There you go. That I would normally partake in. And to not be in those patterns was definitely better for me and for the relationships and for the moment altogether. All right, so now for suggestions for how to for getting yourself, I think, to use the skills that you struggle with. Boy, my mouth is just not performing the way I want it to right now. So one suggestion that I have for that one is to try and find one place to use that skill in your week. So looking ahead at your week, and it doesn't have to be literally one moment. If you're trying to practice the sleeping better from please, then the one place you use it is like bedtime, and you're going to pick like, all right, I'm going to put my phone on grayscale, or I'm going to make sure I develop a 5-minute series of things that I do every night before I go to bed, right? Like one little thing. Or if it's something that maybe you don't have reason to use every day, but you think you could find some place to put it, like an interpersonal skill, fast or dear man. Try and pick out a conversation or a person to utilize it with in that week, right? Try and look ahead to your week, and every week pick at least one place where you can utilize that skill and really gear yourself up for it. Something else I think that can work is to pair it with something that you enjoy. So this could look like doubling up and doing skills that you enjoy together. So with something you don't. So maybe tell yourself that when you're practicing stop, for instance, that part of your practicing stop is going to look like including a little bit of self-soothing with the 5 senses. So I'm just talking to myself now, right? Because I love self-soothing with the 5 senses and I struggle with stop. So if I can think like, okay, if I practice stop, then part of how I'm going to like take a step back is going to be mindful of a pleasant physical experience, something like some essential oil or a smelly lotion that's nice or something like that. Or you can literally try and practice the skill around something fun. So make a silly game out of it with a friend where you and they go to lunch and you don't ask for anything without using Dear Man. You use Dear Man to ask them to pass the salt. You ask Dear Man to ask them what time it is. You're like you don't ask for anything from them without using Dear Man, right? So pairing it with something fun or funny, or pairing it with a skill that you enjoy more. Are 2 ways that I think you can be, you can help persuade yourself, I guess, to approach and use skills that you struggle with or dislike. Reading at the notes, I'm sure I love Michelle's opinions also. So I think some really good options there between the 2 of us. So, all right, at least on my end, though, that means we're at closing moment. So take a moment to get settled and get comfortable, whatever that looks like or means to you right now. Sitting, standing, laying down, whatever feels good and right in your body. And when you're ready, if you're safe and comfortable, I invite you to close your eyes. To begin, we're going to start by just noticing our breath. You don't need to breathe any more deeply or any more slowly than you are naturally. It's just about paying attention. Just about zooming in and focusing in on the rhythms and the sensations of your breath and letting them welcome you into your body and into the present moment. So for today's exercise, I'd like you to begin by thinking of a skill that you dislike. Take a moment. Think about it. I guess I'm saying dislike. It could also just be one that even though you love it, you just struggle to remember it or struggle to use it appropriately. So I guess I'll instead ask you to think about one skill with which you struggle, either because you dislike it or for some other reason. If there's more than one, that's okay. Both Michelle and I named 3, but try and pick just one for tonight's exercise, or today, or this morning, whatever time it is where you are. Once you've gotten a hang of whatever skill it is that you want to focus on for this exercise, I want you to take a moment and really think about why you struggle here. What gets in the way? What's gotten in the way of you trying it in the past, or what's prevented you from trying it at all? Just take a moment to really look at and list out the barriers for yourself. Right, are there wiring difficulties for you? Ways you've been socialized that make it difficult for you, your trauma that makes it difficult for you. No right or wrong answers to this. It's all just deeply personal. Once you've identified what challenges you about the skill and why you struggle with it so much, take some time to think about either what benefits have you noticed from the few times you've successfully utilized the skill, or what benefits can you imagine reaping were you to try or successfully utilize the skill? Obviously, we can't know for sure exactly what would come of anything we do, but use your imagination and your creativity a little bit. And just as you listed out and looked more closely at the struggles and difficulties you have, take a moment to look at the positives, the upsides, the benefits, the rewards that you would reap. Once you've looked at the struggles, the difficulties, and also the benefits, right, the value that you can find in that skill, I'd love for you to take a moment and, in a way not unlike Cope Ahead, see if you can't imagine yourself practicing this skill somewhere in your life in the upcoming week. Much like I suggested in ways that you might practice utilizing this skill, see if you can identify a moment, a relationship, a situation, a type of conversation, something, an emotion that you want to target working with or understanding better, right? Whatever it may be, is there somewhere you can imagine yourself using this skill? And then take the time to do that. Admitting and having in there you overcoming those struggles. Don't imagine that those struggles suddenly vanish, but do imagine yourself getting past them, getting through them to the other side and successfully using the skill. As you do, notice what, if anything, you feel in your body, or what emotions or thoughts come up when you imagine yourself successfully using this skill. Does it feel so elusive you almost can't imagine yourself using it, right? No right or wrong answers here. It's just about doing your best and trying to notice what it feels like to, even in your mind, successfully utilize this skill. Once you've taken a moment to do that, you can allow that your imagined scenario to fade from your mind's eye, and you can gently come back into the room and your body. But I'd love for you, as you do that, to try and carry with you those benefits, right? Trying to remember that there's a reason that you put this effort into these skills, even the ones that you don't like, even the ones you struggle with. And also carry with you that imagined success and see if you can't work on putting it to a real life practice in this coming week. But for now, when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Maybe do some little stretches if it feels good and right to your body. And yeah, we're so glad to have had you with us, everyone. Have a great rest of your month.
To learn more about us and the DBT skills we're teaching each week, join our Facebook group. Simply log in to your Facebook profile and search for DBT and Me Podcast.